All right, so here's another little quick tutorial. This is more or less pulled, well, more pulled from the Arnold documentation. So if you search Arnold, my Arnold liquid, it's the first result. Here's the beginning of the, okay, there's the address if you want to just type that in. But on their documentation, they talk about the best way to model and render fluid in a glass container. There's a couple things that are maybe a little bit counterintuitive or not obvious, and so I just want to cover that real quick. We can talk about the shading and the rendering later, but as far as where we're at, the modeling is what I want to focus on, and it's a pretty quick thing once you know what needs to be done. So here's a brief result that is still in the process of rendering because glass and fluid and subsurface scattering and emission, which is all going on in this image, take time to render. Know that going in if you're going to have a lot of this sort of thing. Expect a decent render time. Luckily, we're only rendering a still image so that these renders can take a while, and it's okay because you don't have to render 24 frames a second. It's just one frame. You can see I was kind of looking better. But here's a fish bowl full of orange juice, which I don't know why you would, but if you do, here's roughly what it would look like. But let's talk about how this is put together. It doesn't look like there's a bowl there, but there is. It's just because it's a glass material, it's invisible in the viewport. But let's talk about how I made this. And so I'll do a new scene. And we're going to start first with just a ground plane, just to have it. And now we're going to add a sphere. And I'm going to move it up a little bit. I'm also going to isolate this for a second. I want to flatten out the bottom. So I'm going to go into vertex, grab that bottom vertex, hold down V to point snap, snap it to there. And then I'm going to select, actually let's select those faces. So these faces are now flat, so I'm going to go to faces, grab that, okay. And I'm going to snap that, oops, to that point. So now I've got a flat bottom to my bowl. I'm going to object mode, hold down D to change the pivot point, and V to snap it to the bottom vertices. We'll snap it right to that center one. And then I can hold down X and snap it to the grid. So now it's on the ground. Lovely. I'm going to jump into front view and just delete roughly the top half of the faces. Something like that works. Okay. Go back into perspective view, and now I have almost a bowl, but there's no thickness to it, so I need to extrude the faces, and I'm just going to bring that thickness in a little bit. Hold down Control. Something like that will work. This is not going to be a fancy bowl, but it will be a bowl. Once I do that, you can see that the normals are reversed, and this is kind of one of the main important points about modeling fluids in glass with Arnold, and probably with any other renderer, is making sure that your normals are going in the right direction. So the documentation calls out for the bowl itself, you want the normals going outside, and same thing for the liquid normals. Okay, but what that means is it's the outside of the surface. So the actual inside surface, the normals are pointing in, but it's the outside of the object, if that makes sense. Basically, you don't want to see any black on your object. So I'm going to go up to Mesh Display and reverse the normals, and that looks good. A quick little modeling thing is I'm going to add, well, go to edge mode first, and I'm going to add a couple of edge loops just to keep this rim sharp. And whoops, not that one. There we go. Oops, there we go. Okay, that's all the modeling I'm going to do for that. There's my glass bowl. Now I need to model the liquid, and that liquid is, by the nature of what liquid is going to conform to the shape of its container, right? So what I need to do is I'm going to make this liquid based off of my container. So I'm going to select a face loop near the bottom. Doesn't have to be the bottom one, but select one face, shift, double click on the face next to it. It's going to select that ring, and then command right click, grow selection, and I'm just going to grow this a few times. Whoops, grow this a few times until it's selected enough faces up the bowl. I could also just hold down shift and click, double click, click, double click, holding down shift the whole time. All right, my water or fluid or whatever is going to go up to there. Now what I want to do is go to edit mesh and extract. Let's make sure our settings are good. Yeah, so we want to separate the extracted faces. Sorry, no, we don't. We want to duplicate, not extract. If we extract, it's just going to take those faces and separate them. If we duplicate it, it's going to copy the faces and then separate them. So, duplicate. So now we can go to object mode. You can see if I move this out of the way, that bowl is still solid, which is what we want. But for now, we can, whoops, I'm just going to select this and I'm going to isolate selected. There we go. Okay, so this is close, but we need to give this kind of volume and thickness. Basically, we need to give it a surface. So I'm going to select this top edge and I'm going to extrude that and scale it in. Actually, before we do that, I'm going to do this with the menu, because this way, as I extrude it in, whoops, hold down control, there we go, I can add divisions while I do it, and that's just a little bit easier to do it that way. We'll do like 4 divisions should be fine. You can see that our normals are wrong, so I need to reverse those normals. I'm going to grab this center edge and we're going to bring this down, snap it to that. And actually, we probably want to go a little bit lower, because when fluid is in a container, there's actually a slight dip in it. It's the meniscus is what it's called. If you remember high school chemistry, looking at a graduated cylinder, you get down at eye level and you can see that the fluid dips a little bit. That's what we're replicating. So we can go and look at this kind of in side view. I'm going to bring that just a little bit lower. I'm going to do this real fast, just to give the hint of it. Grab that center edge loop. Go even lower. Okay. And then the last thing we need to do here is fill in this center section. So I'm going to select these 4 faces or edges and the 4 edges right across from it. I'm going to bridge those. And then I need to add some divisions, so I'm going to add 3 divisions here. I'm going to go multiple edge loops, 3 right there. And then we can bridge these edges. And the same thing on the other side. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Bridge. Okay. So now we have our fluid. We can uncheck that, close that. So the last thing that we need to do, and the documentation again kind of illustrates this beautifully, is right now, because we made the fluid from the exact same form as the bowl, we have what's called coincidental surfaces, which means the faces on the side of the fluid and the faces on the side of the glass are occupying the exact same space. When that happens, the renderer doesn't know what each surface is, where it is, and it gets confused, and you get this weird splotchy effect. Now, so you have a couple of options. One option is to scale it down, but then you get what looks like a gap, and that's weird too. And the kind of recommended option is to scale it up a little bit so it looks like it's filling the glass. It's not physically accurate, so if you're going for a physically based approach, that's not kind of ideal, but it gets you most of the way there with minimal effort. Looks pretty good. It's quick. So that's what we're going to go with. And so all I'm going to do is select that middle object, and I'm just going to scale it along the X and the Z. I'm not going to worry about the Y. And we can go, actually probably, we probably should do it in all directions. But we'll look at it in the side view so we can kind of get a good idea of how much it's scaling. Just like that, just a little bit, and that's it. So now we can, when we smooth that out and when we smooth that out, it's looking pretty good. You can see there's one issue, and that is when we smooth out the fluid, it kind of pulled in from the sides. And so what that means is it needs more edge loops. So we'll go to edge and add an edge loop. Nope, not 3. Don't need 3 edge loops, just need 1. And we'll go just inside the edge, just so that stays sharp. Now when we smooth it out, it stays where it needs to be. Okay. So that's the modeling side of it. And again, we can look, the normals are facing the right way. You know, if you're not sure, you can conform the normals, and you should see gray and not black faces all the way around. From there, getting into the material side of things, if you just kind of want to test it out, you can just add the default Arnold standard surface shader. And once we delete history, and we'll freeze transformations just because. You can go to your material, we'll call this milk, and just add the milk preset. There it is. And then with the glass, again, new material, standard surface, and whoops, I don't know what that was, preset glass. I don't know why these aren't in alphabetical order. There it is. Replace. Okay, you'll need to add some lights, but that's the really quick and dirty setup, and then from there you can customize your materials and your lighting and all of that to get back to that same result that I got with the bowl full of orange juice.